I never wanted to witness my parents having an argument or anything like that.
You're not giving respect. It's not respect.
That's why both.
That's when the kids rebel to me more.
Right.
Because you're responsible.
My kids, they're going to be better than me.
Right.
How to make that work for our family.
My daddy never explained his trauma.
The Kutz and Knowledge. I appreciate y'all. Today we're going to talk about parenting, the culture, and our households and how that shaped us also in the community. I think it's important to note as far as like in our community, in our household, sometimes it's like a little barrier. We should see each other as humans first. As far as like parenting and stuff like that, we should see each other as humans first. And build that relationships as human. I think sometimes what happens is we get caught in the roles of sometimes of being a child or being a parent and stuff like that. And sometimes we just sit back and be like, yo, at the end of the day, we're all humans. I was here before I made this mistake, or whatever the case may be. Or they were here. They was in my shoes before too, so they do know what they're talking about. I think we need to move more towards that communication, and it'll also help us also out in the community. The first thing I would like to go with is just like asking questions as far as like in hindsight, how do you guys compare your guys' childhood to how you raised your children? Yeah,
I'll go. I'll take it. So, I basically raised my kids how I was raised. When I was growing up, community was everything. I could walk down the street and my neighbor could say something to me, and I would respect and learn from what my neighbor said. So, today it's a little different. You got to watch what you say to the kids. It's just different upbringing now. My mother, father were pretty fair, but they were the type. My father was the type to talk. My mother was the type to hit. Mm-hmm. So today's world, hitting is, I guess, a no-no. Mm-hmm. But when I was growing up, she would pop me in a second, and I respected that, and I think I learned from that. So when I was raising my kids, I'd pop them if I had to, and I just thought that's just the way it was, and that's the way I grew up. So unfortunately, I believed in a little spank on the behind. I'm not saying I was child abusing or anything, but a little pop on the backside.
Hey, look, I struggle with that because for the same token, like my mother, man, you ever heard of chancleta in Spanish? Mm-hmm. Like that still gives me, you know what I mean? Like, mom, that's it. But from my perspective, I always felt that as a kid, I didn't do it wrong. But in hindsight, I was pretty bad as a kid to my mom. I put in tough situations, and I look at it from a way, if I didn't take that life lesson she was giving me, I don't know where I would end up. Right. She was kind of steering me in the right direction sometimes, and that was just the way I learned. But now as a father, I got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I couldn't project that. And now those kids test me every day, man. Those kids are smart nowadays, man. They give you a look. You got to be ready to prepare. Mm-hmm. But I struggled with that as a young father. For me, my wife and I had a discussion because I would take my son and I would just be like, "What are you doing?" Not anything crazy again, right? But just like to get their attention. It was like a shock and awe. But then my wife said to me, "Was like, think about it though. If you instill that now, they're gonna think it's okay to touch anybody's face because the closest person to them is doing it to them." So when she flipped it to me like that, I was like, "It's done. I got to change something." Mm-hmm. Like for me, it was like I got to change the way because I still got to be authoritative. But why can't I do it without my hands? Mm-hmm. So I started like looking at my kids. So now daddy's got mean faces. Right. You know what I mean? Like they know if I give them a look, that's what they're gonna expect. And look, nowadays I think we can talk to them. I try to reason with my sons as much as possible. It might be 5-year-old. You hear me talking to my 5-year-old, it's like I'm talking to a regular person. Because at the end of the day, they are. I mean, I don't know how intelligent or not intelligent or what they understand or don't understand. So I treat them as they do. Yes. And what I want them to do as a productive and a good, valuable member of the community.
Right. So with that said, so as far as discipline, So when you catch it when they're younger, I think it's a lot easier as they get older. And then if you have the right morals and you bring them up right, they'll understand and know that you're not supposed to go out and hit anyone else. You know, I got 3 kids, raised my niece, so really technically I have 4 kids, and I don't think any of them are violent. So if you nip the little spank of the pamper while they're young, you catch it early, then you give them the look. Yeah. So after the spank in the butt, you give them the look. Now you got the respect. So, and you know, I respect what your wife says and I respect what you do, but I do think I'm not going to talk that much. Like if I have to sit and talk to him and reason with a 5-year-old,
Why not?
I don't think I should have to.
But no, this is great. This is why I wanted to go. This is where I wanted to go though. This is where I wanted to go. This is where I wanted to go though. Like so. Nah, this is exactly where I wanted to go, but I think, to me personally, I got popped too, or whatever the case may be. I remember the last time I got a whooping. I remember what class it was from. I remember, you know what I'm saying? Like, right. I remember it vividly. But I feel like I'm a smart kid. Mm-hmm. I know how to critically think.
You were a smart kid.
You know what I'm saying?
'Cause I wanted to pop you a few times.
You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I feel like when you're popping your kid, you're kind of like taking away their communication skills as well, because you're not helping them critically think of why this is a problem, why we have, why I see this as a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you put out a sequence of events of like, this is why this is happening, this is why this is happening, or whatever the case may be, you can't do that. And sometimes it may be a problem where we just don't know how to communicate. And instead of saying that, we... Yeah. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes it may be counterproductive because now they don't know how to communicate because they kind of still don't know what they did wrong. But daddy or mommy, they pop me, or whatever the case may be. They're resenting that. They can't hit you, so they go to school and hit somebody else, or whatever the case may be. It's a sequence of events. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, it comes to a point though. If you just popping your kids and you're not giving them a reason as to why you're popping, if I'm just get mad and and I just pop them for nothing, I just leave it at that, and I don't give them no kind of explanation. You let them cool off. You tell them, give them a couple minutes to cry it out, take a nap. When they wake up, you tell them like, hey, do you know why I did this? Because you have to still reason with them. But I think when you spank your kids or pop your kids, it's more of a shock value because the fact that I've gone past speaking to you calmly. Right.
It's no more talking about it now.
It's like now
because you know what you did wrong.
Yeah. It's like now you're just trying me just to do it.
But then my question is like, how well do we know our kids? Because if we have to resort to hitting them, we don't really know our kids that much. Because if you know
your kid,
to me, I feel like
have to hit them.
Nah.
Yeah.
So after a while, the little pop of the spank, I didn't even have to do that anymore. I could just literally just look at them because they knew me. Mm-hmm. So first of all, they need to know me. I don't need to know them. They need to know. They need to figure out.
Look, I'm here telling you that breakfast time, when my wife does it, the house is, and I love my wife, but it's messy. All of a sudden the kids are yelling this, that, and the other. If I'm doing breakfast with them in the morning, they already know, look, daddy don't play that. Right. There's certain rules, there's certain things that need to get done in the way they need to get done. Now, because I feel as though, to your point, I am on that side of the fence, I feel like I have to reason with them. I was just thinking about it on the ride here. Generations, we all get better versions, right? Mm-hmm. People who are born now are going to be younger and smarter than me, are going to have more knowledge, more everything, just because of what they were grown in. I feel like these kids now, if they're 5 or 6, maybe they have something else that maybe they're 7 or 8-year-olds. Now, what I am going to say is, I know what they love.
That's what I'm saying.
And I know my son, he loves that Fire Stick and Amazon Prime like there's no tomorrow. So if he knows he's going to act up, no Amazon Fire Stick the entire day. Now, that kid can cry, and I go, sit down and go cry in your room. But he knows that to him, I feel like I'm showing him a shock value. Like, look, if there's a consequence for your action. If you chose to do this, this is what is going to happen. So now that gives them that critical thinking. Now they can choose. Now they have a choice whether they want to do it or not, and then they know the consequences.
So
my dad set me out one football game, and I was good every football season now. Like, I never acted up during football season because that's something that I love, and if you take that away from me, then I have to correct the behavior. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you can, like, literally outsmart your children. And like, you know everything about them.
I think it's all contingent on the age, too, because I get what you're saying, too.
Right. I'm going back to being young. Once my kids got older,
you don't have to
Yeah,
I don't have to do it anymore.
Young,
I don't
like 2, 3
I don't
years
have
old,
to do that.
They don't have the logical thinking to understand what you're explaining. They don't understand logic. Like they'll understand logic in the simplest form. Like they touch something that's hot and it burns them. They gonna remember that shit's hot. You know what I'm saying? But once they get old enough and you can start speaking to them, then that's when I think you don't want to pop them. You want to explain to them. But early on, they don't understand words. Like 2, 3 years old, they walking around touching everything.
So I didn't know it was like an age. So when I say pop, I'm talking like with Pampers, where you just started walking.
Yeah, I just wanted to say
you started getting into everything. You start touching everything, or you're underneath the sink pouring out all the liquids in the bottom of the sink. And literally, that's what Kendall used to do. If I didn't hear him, I knew he was doing something bad. So that's when I mean pop. So I'm not popping an 8-year-old, or unless I had to, but I'm not popping an 8-year-old, or 12-year-old, or 15-year-old anymore because I didn't have to.
I think that's a very good point because there's parents that take it on to a higher age, and I feel like when you do that at a higher age, where your child already has some logic, you're kind of teaching them that when you disagree with something, you don't logically have a conversation with someone. You just either get angry and stop them from talking. And in my household, my mom was the one that popped. My father spoke, but what ended up happening was, as I got older and that kept happening, I stopped having respect for my mom at a certain age. And I wasn't paying attention to anything she was yelling at me about or popping me for, and I started rebelling and also paying attention, or it started working better on me when my father took away things or gave me a look and said, I don't trust you anymore, things like that. And I think, going back to what I said, if the age is if you're too old to be popped and your parents keep doing that or maybe interrupt you and don't let you talk back at all or have an opinion, what might end up happening is, as an adult, when someone disagrees with you, you'll end up not wanting to hear it either, and you'll cut them off or you'll be ignorant to what they're trying to say.
I'm going to go back to my childhood. So, like I said, my mother would pop. Like, my mother literally would close her fist and punch me in the chest. My father would talk. I would rather my mother pop me than listen to my father talk for an hour. I'm going to be honest truth. My mother popped me and it was over with. I go in the room, I cry and whatever. My father, he would talk, and literally, I'm just saying, just hit me. So, just hit me. I'll give you the belt. Do whatever you...
That's great. My mom asked me that one time. Like, you want to be on punishment or you want the belt? I said, just give me the belt. Like, let's get this over. I need this Xbox. I need this Xbox. Nah, that's cool though. And then even growing into a relationship, I think it's important for transparency as well. I started off the conversation just letting your kids know you human. Like, how do y'all think in hindsight? How do y'all think y'all were with that as far as letting your son know it's okay to cry. Let your daughter know you're gonna be respected and things of that nature. Like, how was y'all with y'all transparency? I think a lot of kids are missing that transparency from their parents, which is causing them to be my parent is perfect, always seeming like they perfect, and then when you guys do mess up, now it's kind of like a hypocritical thing or whatever the case may be, and they I'm not gonna listen just for whatever reason.
That's a great point you bring up, Satay. I mean, look, I'm not perfect, and I've actually had this debate with my father-in-law. We share certain love or certain things that he tries to shy away from his son, and I'm thinking to myself, look, if our kids think we're perfect, we're doing something wrong because we're not. I mean, look, my dad was never around in my life. Never known my dad. When I was 7 years old, we left Colombia, came here, done. So I never had a relationship with a father-son. Now, if I was to say, hold grudges or anything else, why don't you come up here? Come over here. Be with me. Anything like that. No, I mean, look, that was his journey. I got to understand everybody has their own journey. So what I would expect my kids to do the same way. But what I do want them to know is, even if I make mistakes, whatever it was, you are important to me, and you're the most loving thing I have. But know that everything that I did do was for that purpose, to help you and get you going, because I brought you to this earth. That is my gift to you. Regardless of what physical I give you, is that direction. So I think we should, to phrase keep it real 100, we should keep it very real 100 with all our kids at all times. Because if we do, they'll have more respect for us. They'll have more respect for us. If I make a mistake on having my son, yeah, I did do that. I did do that. I messed up. That was daddy's mistake.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I'm not a mom, but I do have a nephew who's one in a single parent household, and I try to have conversations with him like he's an adult, and his vocabulary is out of this world. So it's like, I think my fear is him growing up and having too many women around, not enough men around, and not knowing how to express himself as a man. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, and to add into the discussion, is how do you prepare a child like that, and especially when you say you haven't been around your dad, how do you get a child to the point where he can express himself as a man, feel like those feelings, not feel like, oh, I got all these women around, I want to be emotional like them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's great. So me and I don't know if everyone knows Coach Malcolm Smith. So role models like guys in the community are big. They play big factors on young men that might not have parents, but he should be involved in some sports or whatever he can be involved in to be around, some male figures. I always thought, I look around the room and I think I pretty much raised, coached, or did something with everybody in this room, to be perfectly honest. So as a male role model, I got so much joy from kids like this in the community, from me volunteering and helping out. So I think role models are huge, and he should be involved in other things other than being around all the women in the house. So you got to get him out and get him involved in stuff. I started my son at the age of 5 playing every sport you could think of. Every sport there was, he was involved in it. Now, I was fortunate that I was around and involved, and it helped out. But it got to a point where we clashed. So I needed some other role models, and they actually helped me out. Because once we started clashing, I needed some other male figures to be a part of his life.
Can I add on to what you were saying? I think that I hear what you're saying as a I hear what you're saying as a man, but I also want you to know that it's really important that he does have all these women figures, and he is in tune with his emotions. Because you said right now, how does he express himself as a man? I think that's what we separate that. No, how does he express himself as a human, as a person, right? When you separate it from a man and a woman, now he's already labeled. Now he feels you make him, you put him in a box to where you make him feel like, as a man, you have to express yourself a certain way. And that's what I think is wrong with society now, is that we label men as they need to express themselves a certain type of way. And I think that is good that, he is around other women so that he does learn to express himself, because women know how to express themselves, right? And it's okay for a man to be emotional. It does not make him less of a man because he's emotional. In fact, it makes him more in tune with himself, because he's able to articulate those words, like you're saying. He's able to articulate his feelings and where he's at those times, whether it's negative and positive. So I do think it's important to have those male role models, just because you're able to connect with a male figure. But I also think it's really important that he is surrounded by all those women in the household, because women do bring out that natural comfort and that natural emotion that you're talking about. And I think that is really important that men do know that.
I couldn't agree more with what you said. From my standpoint, even to answer your question. Do I need this?
No, you good.
What I was gonna say is, again, my household was all women. There was, my mother was a strong SOB, boy. I tell you, she would not take any nonsense. And to be honest with you, as I was shaped as a man, it was because of my mother.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, she didn't, I tell you, look, this is a funny story. So she knew I was going through my puberty years, right? So from a woman's standpoint, how do you tell this dude, like, here, go do something with yourself? But I remember her friends would come and like, Al, come here, man. You ever seen what this is? I was like, I don't know, I've seen it on HBO, they got lines everywhere. You know, but it was crazy because I was just but I was just exploring who it was. I didn't know what it was about. But having that male figure and her having the comfort level to say, here, take my son and have the talk with him, right? Those kind of things are important. And I didn't necessarily feel like I didn't get that from my mom. No, she put me in a situation to get what I needed. You know, so as we continue to look at each other from, to your standpoint, not as male, female, because I want to be the best dad, but I want to be the best person. I was having this conversation earlier where when my kids are, when I'm done, what are my kids going to say about me? What is that word or legacy they're going to think about their father? You know, that's important to me. And if we think about that as the end game, your actions will dictate what the right thing should be.
I agree with you both, but there's one thing I want to say. So from your perspective, you were saying it, and I might misunderstand, but I might have misunderstood, but you were saying it as if a man needs women in his life to process emotions. I think the issue is that not enough men are showing that they can be emotional and process their emotions, and they need to show men how they can also have emotions. So one issue is that sometimes when men are raised with just women, they tend to feel the opposite, like, oh, only women are emotional. Right. And they're searching for a man that they could speak with and see the emotion that they have inside. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm separating men and women, because I think, you know, we are equal in terms of humans, but in terms of masculine energy, feminine energy, I do believe that boys need to see men have healthy emotions.
Bottom line, you need both.
Yeah,
you need both. But I do think a young man does need a male figure, and vice versa. We definitely are nothing without women. So,
exactly.
You know, it's just you need both. But at a certain point in life, the young man needs a male to guide him. And not saying women can't do it. It definitely could be done. I've seen it done, so I know it could be done. But you do need that balance, and I think balance makes everything a lot better in life.
Right. I wasn't saying that she doesn't need male figures. I didn't want her to.
Oh yeah. Right.
From the fact, you know, she was saying, "Oh, I don't want him to be around all these females." Like, don't take that away from him because he absolutely needs that.
Right.
Absolutely. I think
and there are some emotional males. I'm emotional. I mean, all y'all know I'm an emotional dude.
And not only do boys or men need to know healthy men who are emotional, but women as well, girls as well, need to see their fathers emotional as well. I know I speak to her dad, and she probably seen him cry one time. And I made him stand there and let her see him cry because I needed her to see that emotion. Like, your dad cries too. He's not as strong and macho as you think he is. You know what I mean? So I think it's not only important for boys to see emotional men, but I know it's important for girls to have emotional dads as well.
For sure.
That's very one thing I want to say to that. So I was lucky enough to have my father and my mom in my life, but one thing that I'm now, you know, as a man, 27 years old, I do a lot of introspective thinking, and my father was very stoic. So he did not express his emotions a lot. He repressed them, and it would just leak everywhere by passive aggressiveness and being upset at people, you know, being negative. And I kind of had to learn on my own from other figures, like you mentioned, how to process my emotions because I wasn't learning it from him. So my opinion, it was, you know, I thought that I had to hold in my emotions, that it wasn't good to show my emotions. And I had a father in my life. And now he's grown a lot, you know, like he's slayed some dragons since, you know, I was living at home. But at that time, you know, it was a very toxic relationship. And my father almost never saw him cry. But I did see him punch some holes in the wall and, like, do some crazy stuff that if he would have known how to handle his emotions, he would have probably been able to, you know, have a happier life because he expressed himself more, because he was able to communicate better, and then I wouldn't have such a tough time trying to figure it out by looking for other role models, reading books, and trying to see how I should be processing it as a man.
And speaking to her point of seeing like emotional fathers and seeing like your father express emotion, that's very real. Like if anybody knows my dad just sit here, he just he just sit in there, don't speak, don't smile, don't do nothing. Like he just be chilling.
Word.
But it's like
My
I didn't
father,
really. It's like I didn't really see my father in a human perspective until a couple years ago. Until he was forced into an emotional situation where he couldn't hold that defense mechanism anymore. So that's important because of the fact that it had to teach me how to handle an emotional male. Because
so that goes back to, I think, like that age group. Like we were, as men, you were a man and you're supposed to not show emotion. You know, you're supposed to be kind of stoic. And obviously there's different types of men and they show different emotions. But for the most part, quote unquote, the man was supposed to be right. He's supposed to not right. Pretty much.
That's an important thing. I understand that now because for many years, like I saw my dad as just like the superhero. Like you can't break him. You can't say anything to him. Like he's good all the time. He's completely unbothered, and it's important for a girl, especially somebody like me. I have to see that because I pick up on certain, parts of his personality. I have that stoic part of his personality, but in order to learn how to use that emotional part, just to learn that from my mom is not just enough. I need to learn that from my dad as well in order to mirror that in my relationship as well as to know how to handle that. So I learned that when I got to be an adult, and when I got to have those adult conversations with my parents, where I could say what I needed to say and have those conversations.
Do you feel like you was unable to say what you needed to say when you was like 15, 16, or you just?
I feel like at a point, I was unable to say what I needed to say because of that respect factor. At 15, 16, I wasn't really the most respectful at the mouth. If I said the wrong thing, the wrong thing, period. It was no finesse in my voice, so it was more of a respect factor. If I can't say what I want to say without getting in trouble. So it's not that they really stifled me from ever coming and talking to them. They always left that open communication. It was more so I know my tongue.
So was it, how are you saying it? It's the
how,
tone. Like,
exactly.
It's the tone.
If you're attacking, and I know your father, if you're attacking, of course he's going to be
exactly. It was more of the tone.
Standoffish.
I didn't know how to do that tone at that time. So it was something definitely I had to learn. Now I know how to fight fair and be like, But it's something that definitely needs to be learned.
Wouldn't it have been interesting if, like, instead of them popping you because you kept coming that way, if they said,
"This is how you say it.
We'll listen to you next time if you come this way."
Right.
I mean, when I
and kind of taught you instead, because you probably learned not from them, but going out and then realizing from other people that this is not how you.
a lot at home. Like, believe it or not, I didn't get in that much trouble outside of the house. I got in more trouble in the house than outside. So when I got popped, I really deserved that. I'll tell you straight up. Like, I deserved the poppers that I got. So it's like mom, in my household, it's more so like, we want you to learn here. So when you go out, you don't have to learn that lesson. Like, they popped me at home. So it was like, all right, you know not to do that outside. So when I went outside and handled my business and went on with life, I'm not conducting myself in that way. I knew, like, yeah, dad popped me when I was 15 for that. Or not even popped me at 15, but like pop me at like 8 or 10 for something stupid like that.
Yeah. I think we also got to be careful because sometimes our parents pass down traumas onto us.
Yeah.
And that's on us to heal that.
That's
though.
life. Like we can't get rid of all of them. And it was that quote we were talking about earlier that like the dragons that our fathers don't slay, the sons have to slay in their lifetime. You know, so like we're never gonna be able to slay all the dragons. And every time that we discipline our kids, there's not going to be, I don't have kids, but I know a lot of things that my father disciplined me for were things that I saw in him that I thought were perfect. Yeah. Now I'm realizing, like, okay, he did a great job. He taught me a lot of things, but there's some other things that I need to learn that he instilled in me that weren't correct and are limiting me in my life. And that's okay, but you got to just be aware that, okay, maybe I'm reacting this way because he popped me every time I did this. But maybe that's not the best way for me to go about in my life.
I think it's coming to a point where it's saying, like, he didn't pop me, like, that's not his first
I'm just saying in general.
He's just talking
I'm saying in general.
Like earlier you were saying you didn't see your dad cry, but you saw your dad punch walls, right? So that was still a sign of emotion, right? Whether it's negative or in a positive way, it's still an emotion. And I think what you were probably seeking, what you were probably seeking as a child was that connection, that emotion. Now, whether it was a pop, whether it was a yell, it still was a connection of emotion, right? So you said you didn't act up outside because you had other connections with other people. You saw anger, you saw happiness, you saw sadness, fights with your friends, but at home, there was no sign of connection. So you would come off in a negative tone out the mouth because you needed that connection of emotion. Whether it was negative, whatever it was, you needed that connection because your dad never gave you that, pride connect. He never gave that emotional connection, but it was that connection of, I'm gonna pop you, I'm angry. So maybe as a child you were seeking that.
I don't want to say that like he was that angry person.
No, I don't.
She backpedaling.
You're on camera.
So I think we're taking. I think we're taking the pot too far.
Yeah. We speaking in general. We speaking in general.
Right.
We just speaking in general, and everybody is really just speaking.
I'm speaking in general. Like you said, the father punching the wall, right? Now, that might be a way that I saw his emotion. But now, if I didn't check that and say, maybe this isn't the way that I should react to things that piss me off. When I get into a relationship, I might be doing the same thing and replicating that trauma with my girlfriend.
Well, now you think about this. So I haven't, again, me and my dad, honestly, we have a good relationship now. We'll talk, but I've never seen the man cry. And trust me, I've tried. Because part of my anger was, I'm angry at you, Mo. Where were you? And I went at him. I mean, my cousin said, you verbally assassinated your dad. I said, I can do that sometimes. But I did not see that man shed a tear. And now, I'm not taking pride in that, but it's kind of to that point you're saying. How do I know he's not expressing his emotion of what he feels a different way?
Right.
Who am I to judge that?
Right. Maybe he's in
more
pain
I don't know.
He can't
right.
express
Maybe
it. Maybe he's in more pain because he can't express it.
It's
like that's something my father has told me.
And it's
and
about
then now that he's told me that, he feels liberated. Like I see my father way happier than I ever did when I was younger because he said I had a lot of emotion. I was sad. I was angry, and I didn't let it out. So maybe 10 years from now, he's gonna come up to you and start tearing up.
Bro, and you know what? I see it I don't see it with me, but I see it with his grandchildren. Like that man, you know what I mean? Like those two boys are the preciousness to him.
Well, we learn as we get older too. We make mistakes,
I think too, like when it comes to emotionality, some people are different. So what we have to understand is, so I'm a son and I have children. And so what happens is my mother and father raised me, but my wife and I are raising our children. And so what happens is I'm not my dad, my wife is not my mom, so our children are going to be different than I am, because a lot of times we want our kids to be like us, but we need to raise our kids to be the best them.
Right.
And so what happens is, as I'm raising my children, my wife is not my mom. So the female energy or the femininity that they get from my wife might be different than what I got from my mom, because my wife is coming from a different place than my mom. So I think what we have to understand, even with slaying dragons, it's not necessarily for us to look to slay dragons more than change what we felt was a negative dynamic. So what I'm saying is, we'll wind up slaying the dragons and changing the dynamic.
The son does it for the father.
Right, but everything we do can't be, well, because my father did, now I'm going to do this. Because I've seen deadbeat dads because they had deadbeat dads. But then I've seen some of the greatest dads because they had a deadbeat dad. And so I think it's situational according to where you come from, your mentality. I have a friend, greatest father that I know. He was raised in a crack house, no dad. Now he has 4 kids. Everybody's high school, college. His son's about to graduate. So it's situational. You know what I'm saying? The emotionality part we got to recognize. Do we want our sons, and I'm saying sons because I'm going back to your nephew. Do we want our sons? There's a difference between expressing emotions and being emotional. So I believe you say your father was emotional. Well, your father expressed his emotions.
Exactly.
But he wasn't emotional.
He expressed them in a way that probably wasn't the healthiest. And like you said, it was my situation and my decision to say, this is not how I want to do it. I want to do it different.
I think the main thing that we have to do is just acknowledge, right? So when you talk about your friend who was in, the good father and the bad father, or not even the bad father, or the father deadbeat, whatever it is, I think that what he lacks is acknowledgement. He did not acknowledge, or he has yet to acknowledge what he's been through and what is the negative and the positive, right? So it's not more so knowing, but it's just acknowledging what I've been through, what I want to be, who I'm going to be, you know what I mean, and how I'm going to make the difference, right? So some people don't reach that point of acknowledgement. Some people don't reach that point where they're in tune with self and what went wrong in their life or what happened in their life. So I think that the first step, and what's really important with all of us, and it speaks volume that we're even in this room listening right now, because a lot of us right now are in tune with self, are acknowledging what we experience and what we are experiencing and where we can change and do better. So I think that that's, whatever.
100%. We're going to take like a 2-minute intermission. I mean, the next topic we're going to talk about is just more so like, how do we feel about, telling our kids the realities of the world versus letting them let kids be kids. So from each standpoint of, whether it's economically, whether you explaining to your kid or like why you can't get this or why you can't get that, or mommy or daddy don't have this, or you explain to your kid that the world ain't, it might not be a nice place or whatever the case may be. Are we having those conversations? And if we are, how are we having those conversations? What are we saying? What should that conversation be like? Like I was just saying earlier, I know from my experience, Roselle was the greatest place, on earth. I thought everybody was like this because we was like really a community. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought everybody was like this, and then you go away, and then it's like a whole different it's like very different. Like I didn't notice there was no white people in my school until I went, and there was nothing but white people in my school. You know what I'm saying? So, and the culture is very different as well too. So it was a culture shock for me. It kind of opened my eyes to things, and it made me be more open minded. It kind of, I think it was a great experience for me because like now just like it was like a ripple effect because I went there, it was like everybody's different or whatever the case may be, and I just started watching everything more. Before it was just like I was in a bubble, literally in like a Roselle bubble, and then that kind of like bursted it too, in a good and a bad way too. So the first thing we could talk about is telling the realities of the world as far as like we I know we was talking earlier, it was like more so we don't talk about sexuality, sex in the household. Like a lot of people refrain from that, and then on one hand we see a lot of violence and stuff like that, and that's cool. So what are the conversations if they were had? Have you guys shied away from having those conversations? Have you shied away from having that conversations as far as talking about like sexuality in the household, or financially, making sure our children are financially literate? We could talk about the emotional part of it too, the sexuality part, and then we move on to the financial and social economic stuff.
I literally hold nothing back from my daughter, and she's 6 years old and she's in the room with all grown people. I literally hold nothing back from emotional, from sexuality, from everything. I don't expose her like, look at this, but I don't allow her to be ignorant and naive to those things, because the reality is that's reality, right? And that's the world. And I want to be the person who, even if I don't have the full knowledge of everything, I want to be the person who plants the seed, right? Because sometimes we always go back to that. My mom told me a long time ago, right? So I don't want it to be like she goes to school and she goes for the first time, hears it for the first time in school or outside with her community or whatever it is. I want it to be like, my mom told me something like that. Let me go back and see if she knows a little bit more about it, right? Yeah. Instead of going, wait, I never heard about that. Tell me more about that. You know what I mean? I want it to come from me first. So I try to keep her, whether it's plant a seed, whether it's keep her knowledgeable of everything that's going around. No, mommy don't got it. I'm broke. Like, I'm broke. To where now she'll question, like, you got money or you don't got money? Or you got some or you don't? Or she'll go even deep, like, how much you got? So I know my limit. How much you got so I know my limit? Nah, she knows, she knows the difference between me and her father. She knows her father makes way more money than your mother make, right? So if you want something big, go ask your father, do that to me. Because I might not have it, right? From sexuality, my best friend is gay. She looks like a boy. And when she first met her, she was like, why does she got a haircut? And then it started to get a little trickier because I shaved the side of my head. Why are you shaving your head? Because I like to be different, right? So she had to catch up to those feelings and questions. But again, because I'm so brutally honest with her, I'm going to tell you. When I shaved my head completely off, but why are you shaving your head? You want to look like a boy? No, I just like short hair. You like long hair. We're different. And everybody's going to be different, right? And even the way I redirect her. I teach my daughter that I'm not better than she is at anything. I'm not superior than she is at anything. When I redirect her, I don't say, I'm your mother and you are the child and you listen to me because I'm your mother. No, I'm human and you're human, but if you talk to me a certain type of way, I'm going to react a certain type of way, not because I'm better than you, but because I don't like when people talk to me like that, right? So when the sassiness comes, I might not hit her, but I'm going to ignore you. I don't talk to people that talk to me like that. Whether you're 6 or whether you're 25, I don't associate with people like that. And when you learn to talk to me, then we can have a conversation. If not, I'm not interested. No, mommy, please, no. And that's more effective than the pop to me and for my child, right? That's more effective than the pop because now she understands is she's not redirecting me because she's better than me. She's redirecting me because she don't like to be talked to like that. You know what I mean? And she knows how to approach different people in that manner.
So are you being like totally open with her in hopes of what? Like in hopes that she can be like comfortable to come and talk to you about everything and, you know, use you as a shield to the world? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know about this. Let me go back to my mom. She may know more about this than I do, and she can help me with this rather than you not having that conversation and she not being able to come back and talk to you.
I think I'm like that with her because I want her to just be open and free because that's how I try to live my life, open and free. No, nothing's holding me back. Why I can't talk? Why I can't express myself? We talked about emotion. It's okay to be sassy sometimes because it's okay to be in your feelings sometimes, you know? So I allow her to be in that space. When she's angry and she's like, you told me we was going to Five Below and you stood there talking with those people. I know I'm going to hear it when I get in the car. And I'm going to respect it, whether, you know what I mean? Because that's the truth. And I'm allowing her to express those emotions even though she's 6 years old. And some people call me crazy because they're like, you let her talk to you? She got that. Because I did hold her up when we did have a promise. So I know I'm going to hear it when I get in the car, like, you told me. And, you know, I think I'm just like that to answer your question. I think I'm just like that because I want her to just be free. You know, whether I'm your mother, the next person, do your thing.
So I think that's great, but the only thing, you are her mother, and it is a respect value. And I think you can't let it go but so far where you have to be the mother. Whether you say, you know, we just friends or whatever, you got to be the mom. You got to know when to cut something. You got to know when to stop it. Like if this is how I raise my kids. If I promised to go to Five Below and I just couldn't do it because it's just too late, then that's when you have that conversation. She shouldn't come back at me, or my kids shouldn't come back at me like, you told me we were going to Five Below. Wait a minute. I'm the parent. You're the child. I respect what you're saying, but what I say rules. And I think a lot of parents, now maybe she doesn't get away with it with you, but the parents that feel like I want to be their friend or their best friend, that's when you get into those problems. That's when the kids rebel to me more. That's what I see as an adult.
But I never said I wanted to be her friend. That's how we labeling it as friend and parent. I'm a human, and I say that word like I really mean that when I'm just a person, right? And not
but you're her mom, though.
Right. But the respect doesn't come because I'm her mother. The respect comes because I demand the respect from everyone, not because I'm the mother. That's what I'm saying.
But you gotta remember, everyone's not gonna give you the respect that your child's gonna give you. And the child growing up needs to know you're the mother, I'm the father, he's the uncle, he's the brother. I think that has to be.
There's a different level of respect. Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Because I think both of you have correct perspectives.
Okay.
Right? But it's probably the way you're explaining it, where you're saying you're not a parent to her because you do allow her to have an expression.
Right, which is
and
great.
A way of thinking, which is great.
I think
I didn't have
what
that.
She's saying is she's not like power. She's not power
yeah,
struggling.
Yeah, but then on his side, what he's saying also makes a lot of sense.
When I lose the power, I might lose control.
It's a different relationship.
Right.
Because you're responsible to guide her through life. You're the only one there in the beginning before she.
Right, but I do think my guidance with that is teaching her respect, but it's also teaching her the consequences when you do those things, right? So when we talked about Pop, and we talked about my dad didn't have no emotion, my mom, and then you talk about I'm giving you all of it. I'm giving you the pop, the emotion, the punch in the wall. I'm giving you all of that, so you see that could come from anybody. You get what I'm saying? Because if you talk to somebody like that, if you talk to a little girl like that, she might smack you. Right? That's where the pop comes in, right? If you talk to somebody else like that, they might not want to be your friend, right? So I'm giving it to her all. And again, I think that I do know, if you know my child and you know our relationship, respect is key to everything. But again, my respect doesn't come because I'm the mother. My respect comes because me as a person, I demand respect from everyone.
Yeah, and I see what you guys are both saying, and I think there's a ton of similarities because respect is the most consistent thing.
Right.
So I think you give her respect, right? And you allow her to be a human, and you allow yourself to be a human, and you create a relationship dynamic that is conduit to respect. So you don't have to say, because I'm the mother, I said so. It's like, because I respect you as a person, you should respect me.
Right.
Right? So that when she goes out into the world, she can know that that's the proper way to conduct herself.
Right. There's also respect for the roles as well. Because like
yeah,
mom and daughter, there's also boss and employee. There's also cop and law-abiding citizen. Yeah. So like, you telling it's okay for you to
which one
talk to respect, but there's also I have a role.
The one that brought you on this planet. I'm not talking about that. That's the one that supersedes.
No. That's
the one that brought you in the world.
Relationship dynamic. So cop and
like a cop needs to treat every.
So if you have respect for each other as humans,
mm-hmm.
right? Does it matter? I know, right? But I'm just asking because I'm genuinely curious. Like, if we boss an employee, right? And I just genuinely respect you as a person, and you genuinely respect me as a person. Does it matter?
It won't be a problem.
It wouldn't be a. Right. There's no boss.
A Trinidadian dude said that to me the other day. He said, as long as we got respect, it's never a problem.
Like, if you got a player, right, that just genuinely respects you as a man in everything that you do, in your guidance, does it matter that you're the coach?
But authority.
If he says
level of authority does matter. That doesn't mean.
Not really. It don't though, because that's why you see 17-year-olds listening to 22-year-olds before they coach, because they just admire them. You know what I'm saying?
You're pretty much saying that you should there's no mother, there's no father.
No, I'm not saying
we're just all humans, which we are all humans. But I'm the father. But you need to know that. And you're the mother, and you need to know that.
To be clear,
to be first because of who you are.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The respect should be there
coach,
first.
You don't respect me,
And then okay,
so when you go to be a cop, you learn to respect at home first.
The human mutual respect supersedes any role or
but
title. Because if you're my mother, think about how long this is gonna last. If you were my father, right, and I am your son, right, and you don't respect me, I respect you. I give you respect because you're my father. As we get older, I'm gonna chip away at that shit. Excuse my language. Mm-hmm. But when I'm Big Quan, it's gonna change.
Right.
Like it's gonna change because you're not giving respect. It's not a respect.
That's why both are correct.
If you're a boss,
that's why both are correct. Like the human aspect.
I know they're both correct. I know.
But
I'm just saying.
Look, my mom used to tell me all the time.
Do
as I tell you, not as I do.
That's hypocritical.
I brought you in this world, and I can take you out.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
But that's how the white people felt to our slave masters too. It's that shit passed all the way down. The traumas.
Too many people.
I think that all passed down.
I think
because that's how the white people used to treat us as slaves too.
Husband, wife is important. Boss important.
It all passed down.
But you have to have some guideline. You have to have some morals. It has to be.
Boundaries don't matter if you don't have a lane.
Well, it doesn't have to. You say mutual, but they're.
Has to be two ways.
I can only teach what I've learned, and I can only teach what I think is right.
But what if you were taught the wrong way?
So,
But
how do you know that though? Huh? How do you know that? How do you know? I mean, we could just go on and on and on.
I know this is all.
I mean, for the bottom line, I mean, if you
studies now.
Yeah, I think that parenting is something. It's changing.
It's too dynamic. It's a lot.
It's dynamic. It's changing.
Oh, it's changing big time. That's why I'm so glad my kids are grown. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I would not want small kids in today's world.
Nah, I know, but I just think, and I'm only asking these questions because, like, I'm newly married, and like, it's coming from me, you know. So it's coming from me. So I'm just asking questions. Like, I just think that basic respect, like. I'm not going to just be cursing at my kids and disrespecting them just because I'm your parent. Mm-hmm. Right. You're human. I know that if I'm doing certain things to you, I know it's going to make you feel bad. So it shouldn't be like, yo, you, like just using your example, I don't want to harp on you, but she's supposed to take her to Five Below right now. She's making a decision, an executive decision, as she's a human. Right. She has the right to not.
As a mom.
As a human. Because if I make a promise to my wife, like, yo, baby, we about to and then I'm a human, I'm the husband, I'm the head of the household, you know what I mean?
But man, I ask how it meets the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, look, so alright, so Five Below,
I'm having
a
hard time with
right?
this one.
So you treat her, look, Five Below is a perfect example because you treat her like a human and tell her, I give you my word, and we didn't do it, and I understand why you're mad. But now the mom role comes in and says, I'm the authority figure because I've been here for longer, and the reason that we hold on, but the reason why we didn't go to Five Below was because I had to do this, which was more important. Now,
no, it's not more important.
But what if it was taking your mother to the hospital, right? Okay. So as a parent, you as the authority figure, you're now teaching her another lesson besides that you're a human and I'm listening to you. You're teaching her a lesson that supersedes that integrity also matters, and sometimes you might have to say no to somebody after you said yes because something important happened to you that you have to take a decision on your integrity. So as a parent, your responsibility is telling her.
Still as a human. Still as a person.
Because
as your friends, you can say I'm going, and then you change your mind and be like I'm not going. It's not. But
you're not every human can discipline your daughter the way a parent can. So you're putting the human element, but as a parent, your responsibility.
So would you
to
want
try
all
to guide her
humans
the right
disciplining?
way. So for example,
a
cop and civilian. So a big issue that we all know is that sometimes cops don't treat civilians as humans, right? So now the basic aspect is that there should be a human element, there should be a community element. The cop should be able to speak to the civilian as a human, and vice versa. However, assuming that the cop is, enforcing laws to keep society in order, he's also, as an authority figure, expected to be respected as an authority figure who's enforcing a certain amount of laws without it superseding the human element, where if the person disobeys, they might beat the shit out of him, you know what I'm saying, and not treat them as a human, but there's still an authority where they have to enforce that so that.
But to me, that doesn't come because of authority, right? So you want to talk about cops. What about the white cops that shoot and the black cops that don't? You get what I'm saying? The good cop, bad cop, right? So it's not because of authority. It's because of who they are, right? So as a human, not because of authority.
That's why the basic element is the human element.
So the title.
Your point, I'm saying that's the most important. But there's still an authority in terms of. So I'm her mom.
I'm guiding her, but still humanly I'm guiding her, right? Because we never stop even learning, right? So my mom's still teaching me to this day, right? And my friends still teach me. So my friend is less than my mom, even though you get what I'm saying?
I agree with you 100%.
So
what I'm saying is that you're still guiding her around as a parent.
Right, but what about those mentors you talked about, right? Do they take away from the father figure?
No, but
I only use that. As an authority figure, they might say, listen, you're doing this incorrectly because I've experienced it in my life. And that right there is an authority dynamic because the other person has experienced something and they are putting some sort of authority based on their experience and their level of power.
I get the technicality when we talk about mother and father. I get it, but and she knows I'm her mother. She doesn't see me as her friend. She doesn't see me like we BFFs. Like, she knows I'm her mother. She knows who I am. But me, you know what I mean? Me, in my mind, in my soul, in my spirit, I know how I am with her.
I think that line
you get what I'm saying?
just brought us to what I'm trying to say. That you treat her as human, but she knows you're not a friend. So another
I am a friend too.
Yeah, but you did mention that there's a different dynamic, that it's not just friendship. You are her mother.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
There's an authority dynamic, but you treat her as a human in that dynamic,
Right.
which can happen. Both things can
But
happen.
you're the mother.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should be gung ho on the titles.
I think it should be a happy medium, to say the least, because, I mean, for example, I respect my boss, but certain things that he tells me to do, I know that I'm going to do them because it's my boss.
I hate the word boss.
But just to
I got a problem with
bring it back to the original question, I think the importance of it all is to take whatever your parent is teaching you, or whoever your mentor or the person that you work with, take what they're teaching you and learn what you want to take. So how my parents taught me was to be a thinker. So yeah, a lot of things they say, do it because I said so, which I probably won't raise my kids the same way, but it made me to the point where I think, okay, now I even tell my mom, she complained about certain things. I be like, Mom, everybody wasn't raised the same. Maybe this person grew up with this way of thinking, you know what I mean? So I don't think like her in certain situations, because I used to be just like my mom. I saw my mom cry 2 times in my life, and I used to have that same type of demeanor. And then I grew up and I was like, wait a minute, it's a problem with this. Certain things that she's taught me about financially, spiritually, those are maybe the things I don't follow. But I just learned, like, some things I'm going to take and some things I'm not. And I think that it's important to every human being to have for a parent to teach them, okay, yeah, I trust you enough. I gave you the tools. Now I'm going to trust you enough to take those tools and take it out into the world. I'm going to trust you enough to be a thinker.
So
and
that's key right there, what you just said. So you're going to take what you have with your kids and you're going to do the best you can to teach them and go out in the world with other humans. But as a parent, a mother and a father, you got to sit down and you got to show them what's right and what's wrong. And then you just pray that they'll be able to socialize and be a part of humanity, so to speak. So that's why I think whether you like titles or not, it starts at home as the parents, the mother and the father, or the grandmother, or the grandpa. I'm sorry, I grew up with the grandmas and the grandpas, and I just think it's important to have titles like that.
I think as long as you
forget the other titles, forget the cops and the family.
Well, you know, look, we all have. I remember every story about my grandfather he ever told me when he went hunting. You know, back in Colombia, he would take his dogs, go hunting. And I remember sitting down and listening to this man. Like, man, I can't believe you went out, stayed out camping. And it would be stories. Like, those things shaped the way I saw the world. You know what I mean? Like, you think about how many great stories our families have. Like, if we were just to sit down and have a conversation.
All night long.
You know what I mean? But we would learn so much. You know, and one of the biggest things as a parent, now this is me, that I try to do is I try to expose my kids through that. Go talk to your aunt. Talk to your uncle. Whatever perspective they have, I'm sure it's going to come back to me, right? Did you hear what Uncle Victor just told me? Yeah, that's not right. But at the end of the day, exposing them to different levels of perspectives is what it's about. Like, I love traveling with my kids. I love taking them everywhere. Because, again, how are they going to know what the world interacts? You said, you know, you would be afraid to have kids in this age. Well, I'm afraid with you, but I got them. So I got to find a way to make it work, right? I got to, but with that old school vibe that I grew up with, that I feel is right. But at the same time, adapting to their culture, right? So to hear maybe a little perspective, I have to learn things that I never thought I would need to learn. But in order to keep up, to make sure that I'm in my child's life, so they don't see me as a cool dad anymore, I gotta make sure I'm changing my sauce and my flavor.
And not,
I think
and
that's
not
just
only, and not only that, I think that sometimes, well, what we have to take as well is that You could have 5 kids, raise them exactly the same way,
For sure.
and all 5 of them come out completely
For
different.
sure.
So it's not about, you know what I mean? It's also about learning your child and knowing what you got to work with, right? You know what I mean? Because I could talk with confidence about my daughter because I know what I got to work with. Like, I know my daughter is a mature 6-year-old who can handle what I give her. But her brother, you know, he's not my biological son, but I raised him since he was 2 and he's 11. He a different type of kid. I can't give him all this, you know, all these words and all this stuff because he not going to handle it. Or he going to look at me like, what? You get what I'm saying? So it's also, I like how you said, keeping up with the culture, but keeping up with your child. You know what I mean? You give them something, and you be like, nah, I can't be too hard on her. She's a little softy. You know what I mean? So I got to embrace this one. I got to give you the tough love, but I got to embrace you. So I think it's also really important to know, yes, be open with your child, but also know what your child can handle. You know what I mean? Also know what you're working with, and if you have more than one child, or just that one child, know that if you can be open with them, and how open can you be with them?
You know, you bring up a great point. You know, my son, my eldest, Brandon, right, he's special needs. Socially awkward, very nonverbal. You know, you guys met my son, he's very nonverbal. Lot of noses, he's the kid who wears the headphones. Now, if you look at it, that was in itself, like you just said, I had to learn how to make that work for our family. Right? Because I didn't know, right? What am I supposed to do? But that's the whole idea of how parenthood is so different.
Right, and you're always learning.
Right.
It never stops.
Always gonna, because I credit my growth. I've told this to several close friends of mine. I give my son, my eldest, Brandon, I gave him the gift of life, like you said, I brought him, but he gave me the reason for the living.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, he really pushes me to that next level because I work twice as hard to help him succeed.
Right.
And not even succeed, I strike that, just to live. Because at the end of the day, the labels of success are totally different.
Right.
Some people might look at him saying he's not very bright or successful. Well, in his world, he's probably the happiest kid in the world, right? And he's doing what he needs to do. So that's how important perspectives are. And again, you're right, knowing our child and what we can do to make sure they have the right tools to be able to survive in this new changing world.
And not everything that you know, sometimes when we talked about earlier, like, I'm not gonna do this what my mom did. Your child might need just what your mom did.
What?
Your child might need that. So that knowledge that you have, don't throw it out the window. Keep that in the back of your mind and in your spirit somewhere, because you might have a kid that you're gonna be like, you know what? Them pops my mom gave me, this one right here needs it. You know what I mean? So again, knowing your child, and again, parenting never stops. You know, my mom, I'm 20, I'll be 29 next month. My mom's still learning me because I'm still changing. And I'm changing because of her. I'm learning her. And as I'm learning her, I'm learning myself. I'm in tune with myself and knowing what works. Now, how do I tailor that? Because I'm an articulate person. I verbalize my feelings. But she need an ass whooping. So, like, how do I do that? How do I get that out? Because you know what I mean? I never had that. My mom never put her hands on me. But this one a little tough. I need to, you know what I mean? So again, I'm still learning and I'm still changing, which means my mom's still learning and she's still changing, and she's 50.
I think you just gotta have that perspective both of you have. Because a lot of parents don't have, like all of you have.
Yeah.
A lot of parents don't have that
It's
perspective.
that balance.
Or it's like they think they're always right and they don't let their child feel like a human and like they could have a perspective. So at the end of the day, regardless of like how, you know, you articulate yourself, or you articulate yourself, it seems like you all know that you need to allow your kid to have perspective, and you need to know that you might not always be right. So that in situations like when you mentioned, you know, I treat you like a human, but I'm your father, so I'm right in the situation. You also have
not that I'm always right. I'm not always right.
That's exactly
but
what I was going to say.
I
You're the
will
father,
admit,
you're doing your best.
I could be stubborn. I could be very stubborn.
Moment,
But that's like
but that you know, I might not be right, and then later on,
I'm still your father.
Chill, see, I don't like. That's the thing. I don't like the. Don't pull that card. Don't pull the gold card.
That's the gold card.
So my thing is like, to me, I think it's more so like just from listening to the conversation. Like, you know, what I take from it is just more so like, yo, empowering your kid. Like, it's a lot of hierarchies in the world. Cop, you know, y'all mentioned a lot of title roles or whatever the case may be, coach or whatever the case may be. We striving off the title thing, but it's also empowering your kid and allowing your kid to be able to critically think too as well, and say like, yo, I don't like when you get your own house or whatever the case may be, then you'll have your own rules. These are my rules. I just want you to respect them because I pay the bills or whatever the case may be. And also, I think we give our kid more like credit than we give them, and we tell them the reality of the situation, what we going on, how we going to work. We really don't like our job, and then we coming home, you stressing us out. That's adding on. But are we having those conversations and saying, yo, I hate my job. I don't feel like talking today. Or are we just saying or are we just lashing out or whatever the case may be, or whatever it is. But I think it's just more so the communication factor of how somebody feels or what's going on that the kid don't know about. Like sometimes the kid don't know about, or sometimes that kid really didn't do what the teacher said he did, or whatever the case may be, or just because an adult said it. I'm going to believe it. And I think my mom did a good job in doing that too, of going up to the school, having that conversation, like, so what happened? Or whatever the case may be. And me being able to have the conversation with my teacher, the teacher be able to say whatever he said, I'm saying my piece. My mom know I'm not a liar. Some stuff I did do, and some stuff I didn't do. But I know I didn't do that, or I know my kid ain't do that, or whatever the case may be. But when you just say like, no, this is right, this is wrong, you kind of pulling that person's feet within them. And then I don't think you give them like a chance to be like, yo, go in the world and be your own boss. And you really don't have to worry about somebody telling you what to do. And so what's the conversation between, so the parents have a disagreement on how to handle the child, like what's that conversation like?
Behind closed doors, in front of the child.
So
you gotta have it.
It's tough though. I don't know. Like some people handle it in front of the child, or some people handle it either way. Whatever the conversation is.
I saw a lot of it handled in front of me.
Yeah,
and it wasn't good.
Right.
It doesn't leave a good impression. It makes that child think that it's okay to handle things confrontationally rather than speaking and communicating.
But what if it's not confrontational?
It depends on how is being handled. See, I come from a household where like when it came to things and my parents were disagreeing, it wasn't our business. Because at the end of the day, outside of them, it was always the family first. We always came first to our parents. But that was still their relationship. If they having a disagreement about us, it's not our business to know what it is. Because at the end of the day, in my household, I'm not saying it's correct, it was a child's place in a child's place. That's how I was raised. And now I can come out and, they don't do that to me anymore because I'm an adult, 26 years old. So they're going to be like, yo, shh. It just doesn't work for me.
I like to be that we talk.
It doesn't work for me. Like, what we talking about? But like, I think that's very important though. I think because I feel like that's important because of the fact that if you argue in front of your child, they're gonna think like this is normal.
But what if it's not an argument?
Depends on how you. I just think certain things should be discussed in front of kids. I feel like certain topics aren't for children. That's me.
Just think about it from a perspective.
That's me.
What if somebody's having a conversation about you? Even if it's not a bad
right,
one.
but then think of it like this, right? And again, I just like to be the devil's advocate for certain situations. I think about my situation, and I always kind of like, whatever. Anyway,
that helps you
think of it like this, right? If you as a kid, if your mom and your teacher were talking about you, and you like, I want to know what they saying. I want to know if my mom got my back. Like, is this teacher gonna? And your mom comes out, and she goes, "You're on punishment. I don't want to talk about it. I spoke to your teacher, and you're on punishment, right?" But the whole time, and you're like, "Damn, what if I just wanted somebody to be?" You know what I mean? You're thinking your mom didn't have your back, or your mom listened to your teacher, and your teacher accepted whatever your mom accepted whatever your teacher said, right? But what if you sat there and you listened to that conversation, and you knew somebody had your back? Whether you were still on punishment or not, you would sit there and you could go, damn, my mother understood she believed me. My dad got it, right? So what I say is,
I'm talking about in the home.
Right, so we've had conversations like that in front of her, to where she's not allowed to stay over nobody's house, right? So
it's crazy these days. Okay.
She's only allowed either in her godmother's house or her grandmother's house. Before that came about, we had that conversation. We gonna let her go? I don't know. Who wanna be there? I don't know. She's standing right there. I don't know. I don't like her staying in nobody's house. Yeah, but it's Janelle's house. Like, why not? Right? So she got to experience, like, Dad, my mom gets it. Okay, my dad doesn't get it. Whatever the final decision was, right? It wasn't an altercation. It wasn't an argument. But she got to witness both perspectives, right? She got to see both sides. Who got it? Who didn't get it? Who had a different idea, right? So whether she was able to go or not, she understood both sides. Instead of saying, we've come to the conclusion that you're not going, And a lot of times we'll be like, "That's your mom. Your mom said it. I was gonna let you go, but your mom should know."
I think it was.
Mom did it.
I think it's situational because I saw it all.
That's funny though. That's hilarious. Yo, that's hilarious though.
Tell me situations didn't happen like that.
It depends on how, because I saw it, and the same thing. You actually brought up a great point. Oh, my mom, she's on my side, my father's not, and that dynamic I saw repeatedly. Oh, my mom is always against me, my father's with me.
Okay.
So I stopped respecting my mom, and I would just try to hope that my father had my back. And then my mom, when I did something wrong, she would yell at my father in front of me because he let me do it. You know what I'm saying? So it depends on the situation.
So wait,
and
okay,
how
wait.
that dynamic conversation was.
Did you do something wrong? Do you know you did something wrong? Did you do something wrong?
Some situations.
And you want somebody to have your back for doing something wrong. Is that what you're trying to tell me? Wait. Let's listen. You said your teacher, the teacher and your father got called to school. Did you do something wrong? Let's nip this in the bud first.
Sometimes I did.
I'm not going to have your back if you did something wrong. Because that's not how I taught you, and that's not how I raised you. So I'm not going to have your back. If you came to me and said, I did not do this, and you weren't, then I got your back.
Right.
But I got your back regardless.
Right.
Whether you think so or not. So I'm the parent. I got your back. I've always got your back. And if everybody in this room know me, I got your back. I'm there for you. But if you did something wrong, you did something wrong, and you got to pay the consequences. And that's just the way. That's the way the world should be.
Sometimes it's not something to do with. I agree with you 100%. But sometimes it's not a situation about doing something wrong. So for your example, she didn't do anything wrong. Right. You're just coming up with a decision of whether your perspective, which is I don't want her going anywhere, versus her father's perspective.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the teacher situation.
Because I saw a lot of that.
I got to take off work to go to school.
I saw a lot of that.
And you telling me, did you do something? Just don't be straight up with me. If you didn't do it, then I got your back. But if you did, I don't got your back. That's just the way it works. I'm there for you. I'm still going to be your father.
But doesn't it also come down to, like you said, we all said earlier, you have to know your child. Doesn't it also come down to knowing your parent? Because I never had to be in the room with my mom. I knew she had my back.
Right, exactly.
Regardless.
Exactly.
But how do you know? I knew.
I got your back.
How do you get there?
But my thing is,
yeah, that's the key though. How do you get there? That's how. All the how.
Humans
I got you.
supersede the role, right?
But my thing is, you have to know them. Like, it's certain things that I don't have to see. I never wanted to witness my parents having an argument or anything like that, because one thing my grandmother showed me was
real talk right there. That's real talk.
If my grandfather,
that human ain't gonna know.
My grandfather showed me things about himself that I learned just by watching him. My grandmother never had to tell me certain things that he did in the past, because I knew his character from just watching him. So it wasn't until I got older and I can handle those type of conversations that I learned what my grandfather did in the past to my mother, my uncle, and things like that. I do think that they're at a certain age when a child is, and every child is different, as we discussed earlier, because some children are more mature than others. I think that it becomes at a certain age when then you could start telling them, okay, these are the type of conversations we were having, or this is what was going on.
So I think why I do it is because for many different reasons, depending on the situation, depending on what we're talking about. We're leaving, Kay. Chill out. Depending on the situation, depending on what we're talking about, sometimes, like we talked about earlier, like her father being a little bit different and not more emotional. So I have those conversations with him, or those disagreements, or whatever, the back and forth with him when it comes to her, so she can also see how I handle him and how he's receptive to the words I use and the tone I use. You get what I'm saying? So again, we're both going to come, at the end of the day, we're going to come up with one solution and one conclusion, and we're both going to agree to it. Whether a little bit I'm like, I don't want this, we're going to come to one. But how we handle each other is how I want her to see it, so that she can learn how to handle him. You can talk to your father and tell him why you don't want to do something. Express those things to him. And this is how you do it. Watch me. Why can't she go? Why can't she? She wants to go to do X, Y, and Z. And also, you're going to have to allow him to express himself because I don't want her to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, I respect that. And we have that dynamic in front of her, and then I go, sorry, Daddy said you couldn't go. And we just have to respect that. Right? So that's why I have that's why I have those conversations in front of her, because I want her to witness that. Like, why not witness? Again, we're going to come up with the same conclusion at the end of the day.
Now, does it depend on the subject? Like, going over somebody's house, okay, but now...
Honest, you want me
to be
complete?
Let's talk about a different subject.
Well, like what?
I don't know.
Because
to you, does it depend on
Can I say
honestly,
this real quick? Just real quick.
Okay.
So, emotions are going to take over because we are human. That's the human aspect. We're human. We're gonna argue and we're gonna disagree. So we're gonna fight as humans. It's just natural. It's just natural. And you'd be lying if you didn't say you had an argument in front of the kid and you didn't.
Right.
Would I rather not have an argument in front of the kid? For sure.
Right.
But are my human emotions going to take over?
Right.
It might.
Right.
And it might not always be.
It might not always be pleasant.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm sorry, but I just wanted to say that.
Which is why this scenario, I think, might be good too. So you had the conversation with the teacher. And then you come out, it's not one or the other. So one example was you came out and you said, this is the way it is, that's it. Your teacher and I had a conversation versus letting her see the conversation. There's also, you had the conversation, you go out and you explain to her, we had the conversation, your teacher said this, I said this, blah, blah, because sometimes the emotion does come in. Like in my example, there was a lot of times that one parent was right, the other was wrong, or both were right, but they didn't. But I saw a lot of emotion and argument because, and that wasn't healthy. Because my mom then the next day would apologize and say, you know what, maybe you're right. But seeing that emotion at that moment, her being mad at him being mad at her, I almost didn't see an argument. All I saw was different opinions, arguing and yelling at each other, which might not be healthy. So your perspective, the way you're doing it might be great, but not every parent
and not only every parent, but every child, right? So I have a video, and I wish I had it. I probably do have it in my phone right now. My daughter was 3 years old, and we had that emotional argument in front of her that had nothing to do with her, but everything to do with us, right? And it got ugly. Yeah. And I left his house. We're not, this is TMI, we're not together. We're great co-parenting. So I left his house, and my 3-year-old goes, you need to stop thinking with your brain. You need to start thinking with your heart. My 3-year-old said this, right? She witnessed this argument, and she knew you were thinking outside. Because I was like, no, I'm not going over there no more. Like, and she was like, you got to, like, she brought me back to reality. But that was because she's also witnessed that y'all can have a civil conversation. You get what I'm saying? Calm the hell down, ma. Like, you know what I mean? Don't. You thinking with your brain. Stop thinking with your brain. Think with your heart type of thing. And again, I think it was because she's exposed to those things. Why not show emotion? Emotions are real. And sometimes it does get ugly. But if you are conscious of those things, and like I feel like I am conscious with those, if it gets ugly, I can redirect it and bring it back. Like, this is why it got ugly. And you know what? We gotta go back and fix it. And I will call her father in front of her and be like, I apologize. Yes. You know what I mean? I went off on him one day, a couple of weeks ago on FaceTime with her right there. And at the same time, with her right there, I called him back and I said, I'm sorry. You know what? I apologize. I should have never spoke to you like that. My bad.
I do want to go back to that's a really good point, because then she gets to see that you also admit your wrongs.
Right.
But one thing I do want to go back to, which I'm curious about, does it matter in terms of subject to you? Or is any subject something you would talk about in front of her at this age? Or does age have a say, in your opinion? Because obviously people think 15, this is a good age for this, some think 12. But for you, is it any subject goes?
For me personally?
Yeah.
Any subject goes.
Okay.
And just to wrap it up, I just think, the whole gist of it is just more so communication, the relationship dynamics that you have with your children, and just being open-minded or whatever, and not being stuck in one way and kind of like bridging that gap and meeting in the middle. I can be wrong. My kid may have a point, or whatever the case may be. I'm your parent. I do want the best for you. I think those things, sometimes, but if you don't build the relationship, anything you do after that really don't matter. You know what I'm saying? So I think the most important part is just building a relationship with your kid, so y'all can have those conversations and everybody can grow. They're on fourth, whether it's 3, 4, 5, all the way until they get to an older age or whatever the case may be. I think that was I think, to speak from my personal experience, I had a better relationship with my mom, like personally. Me and my dad had a good relationship, like sports wise. Me and him never had a relationship like personally. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a sports relationship. It wasn't never a personal relationship. Like, I don't know you outside of sports. You know what I'm saying? I don't know who you are as a person. Like, we never had this personal, like, conversation or, how was your childhood or whatever. He didn't speak on it. He just not an emotional dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just sports.
So did that change who you are today? Does that make you better or worse, or make you a good person today? Because you have a mother and you had a father who totally different dynamics, and I can relate to that because I was the same way.
Yeah.
So my wife dealt with more of the emotional, the homework, all the different dynamics, and I dealt more with the sports. Now, I was there, always. I got your back, always. But the dynamics were different. My wife was more like your mom. So when you look back at it, did it make you a better person, or did it hurt you?
It was a good balance, but it's a lot of stuff that I didn't get to experience too as well. Like, he made me a good person because he always did for others,
right,
or whatever the case may be. But it's also a dynamic in there where it's though, like, I didn't get all of you either because you gave it to everybody else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But you saw that. You saw him giving. So now you're giving.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's a lot of good out of that now.
And I'm just trying to do it a different way where I have more freedom.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
So as a parent, you just do the best you can, and your father's not a talker.
Yeah.
Your father's not like that. So he did the best he can, and he showed it by giving back to the community. And obviously, it did a great job on you.
Yeah.
Because you are who you are because of your two parents.
Word. And I told him I was proud. I told him I was proud of him like 2 weeks ago. I'm
right.
like, I'm proud of you just because
right.
what I'm trying to do and
exactly.
what I seen him do. I'm just going to do it a different way, where it's just more freedom and I have time with everybody that I want to have time with.
I think it's important that you learn your parents' love language, though. It's like
right.
you need to learn how your parents say I love you, because we all look for these.
Right.
It's like we get older and we look back and we criticize our parents,
right.
but back then we didn't criticize our parents because we thought they were doing such a damn good job.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times our parents, like, we come out partially because of our parents and partially because of what we've been through.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we have to stop looking for parents to be a manual, because
right.
you have to learn through life. We keep saying, like, well, our parents did this, so
right.
we have to learn, we have to heal through this.
That is
it's
excellent
a part of life.
point.
You have to heal through a whole bunch of other stuff
right.
that's gonna happen to you.
Right.
It's not just your parents' fault.
Absolutely.
After the age of 20, it's no longer your parents' fault. It's a failure to grow. Yep. It's a failure because you choosing to use this trauma, that whatever you've gone through. Because at the end of the day, we can acknowledge that our parents are human.
Right.
So, but can you exactly acknowledge your parents are human and let it go of what's happened?
That's really important.
That's the point that you really got to get to in order for that to grow. Because at the point, there was a point I was angry at my parents because I'm like, well, y'all don't get me, y'all don't understand nothing about me. I had to grow through that relationship. Every parent's relationship is not going to be perfect. You're going to have those times where you're going to bump heads. I'm not going to be dealing with them.
And resenting them is bad.
What Iman is saying, but I also understand what's like. I think it's like Chris was actually saying, like, I have a more personal relationship with my mother. Like, she's just like, and my mom's not necessarily like nurturing like the traditional sense, you know what I mean? But she would explain things and she would have conversations and tell me like why she would go through these kind of things. Like, a lot of the explanation came later on, but to Jordan's point earlier, like, I learned a lot by watching her. You know what I mean? And then so when she did something that I felt like hurt me, I cut her a little more slack than I would my dad.
Yeah, me too.
Because my mom had traumas and I understood her traumas. My dad never explained his trauma. My dad grew up with an iron fist. Well, I don't think there was necessarily anything wrong with it, but it's just that I didn't really see the human side of him. Back to your point, like, I just saw, this is my father. This is what it is. Like, even when I was angry, I'm still gonna respect him because he'll slap me up. Like, but it's like,
didn't cut him no slack. I don't know him.
Yeah.
I didn't know him. So now we're at the point where it's like, oh shit, like you was messed up too. You know what I mean? That's why.
So,
but
when do you realize you don't know your parent? I mean,
when you get older.
So that's what I'm saying. So you don't realize that until you get older as an adult.
But I think
as a child, your parent is not thinking like, okay, I'm not communicating that well with my son the way I should communicate with my son. Is there a right way to do it? I don't know, but you do the best you can as a parent. So I don't know how your father grew up. I don't know how your father grew up. I can assume how your father grew up. I can assume how Malcolm's father. I know how Julian's father grew up. And Julian, you could jump in too because your dad is the same way, right? We weren't very talkative, we showed through our
y'all can talk
actions.
Y'all talk though.
Sports.
Yeah. I'm saying y'all talk though. Y'all talk.
But again,
it's a different dynamic inside the house.
As a kid watching, that's what I'm saying. Now I'm to the point where it's like I said, it's on me in a sense because it's like I didn't cut my dad any slack. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think for like a lot of stuff, like in my family, just like understand like me and my dad will have a conversation today. He'll tell me something. I was like it really makes sense. But it makes now I'm starting to appreciate him more because I didn't know what was happening. Right. So it's one of those things where it's like I wish I had that earlier.
But that's the best thing though.
But
you didn't know earlier though. According to you didn't know earlier.
No, I didn't.
But you know now. But now it makes it a better dynamic with your father because now you can really communicate with him now. Because I did the same thing with my father growing up. It was my mom, and unfortunately my mother died after I graduated my senior year in high school. And now I have my father. And it's like, well, what do we talk about? It's like I'm home from school. What do we talk about? Sports. That's all we knew. Because everything else I communicated with my mother. And that's just the way it was. So,
I think, too, I think it's the family dynamic. So my father, for instance, who probably coached or taught everybody in this room at one point or another. So growing up, I would see people, and you don't always catch things when you're younger. You don't always understand what's going on. So my father, today, right now, I can leave. He probably at the high school right now. So
he just called me.
He probably at the high school. So he's a giver. That's what he does. He gives. And so when I was younger, I would see a lot of high schools and kids would want to be around my father, and I'm kind of watching and I'm looking, and believe me, I wasn't any more mature than anyone else. But at a young age, I understood some of these kids want what I have.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so now I'm looking at my father in a different light. So he coaches you, or he mentors you, or he might take you out, or I get to go home with him.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so at a young age, I got to understand his dynamic. So he never sat me down and said, Malcolm, give. Malcolm, be nice to people. Malcolm, love. But I always saw it. Mm-hmm. It was, I've coached. I had Satir. And just how my father dealt with Satir. We all grew up, we all mature. I'm not saying Satir was immature. Right. But what I'm saying is, he had a different emotional mentality when he was in high school. But one thing that I loved about my father and learned about him growing up, because I had a different emotional mentality when I was in high school, he's the same way with everyone. And so, like you said about your father, there's things that you learn intrinsically without trying to learn them, and it becomes a part of who you are. As she said earlier, it's our job to decide, is this something for me? Or, because our parents are our first book. We learn life through our parents. Once we get older, once we mature, we yay or nay what we've learned. Mm-hmm. Right? We've learned in history books. We're not going to go here. We've learned in history books how we came to be. Mm-hmm. How America came to be. But we got older and it was like, well, wait a second, that don't make sense. After that happened, so that can't make sense. Because then, so what happens is we learn first from our parents. My mother, father, first book. You know why I am the way I am? Because I took the best
from both of them. And that made me who I am. My kids, they're going to be better than me because they're taking the best from my wife. And the best, so we get to see negatives. We get to see both sides. Okay, yeah, Dad, I probably don't do that. I just told you earlier, he do too much. He always working. I'm here now because when work was over, I said, hey, listen, I told my wife, I'll be out there, I'm going with something. Oh, yeah, go ahead. But what happens is I've learned that I need to, and believe my father was there, but I need to be, like, do the math. I taught my daughter how to do math. My mom taught me how to do math. So seeing my mom and how she held down the household, I didn't understand that until I was married. I'm like, dang, Mom took us to practice. Dang, Mom picked us up. Dang, she fed us when we got home. And she did homework. And she did, and Dad put us to bed. But that's because he was coming from work, having worked all day. So growing up, what am I? A workaholic. I got married and was like, nah, this workaholic thing is not going to work for my wife and my kids. So I had to adjust and maneuver my way for my house, even though that's how I came up. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So you gotta, everybody takes the best, right? Everyone takes the best from their parents, and sometimes we take the worst.
At least you hope.
It is what it is.
Word.
But in having this parenting conversation, I mean, you parent the way you were parented. It's that simple. Until you figure out, like, you know what? Nah, that's not gonna work for them. Or you know what? That was good for them. That kid might need to be popped, or that one don't. You see what I'm saying? So I think we need to continue to have more conversations like this, because parenting is always evolving.
Evolving.
As we are.
Yeah, definitely.